It started with a pair of eyes watching me from the broken porch of an old abandoned house on the outskirts of Austin, Texas, every time I drove by. Those eyes followed deep, dark, tired eyes, the kind of eyes that once trusted the world and had been let down too many times. Neighbors whispered about him, a German shepherd left behind. 3 years ago, when the family packed up and vanished, they said he hadn't moved. He sat on that porch through storms, burning summers and freezing nights. He waited. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept thinking, why hadn't anyone brought him in? Why did everyone just feed him scraps from a distance and drive away fear? He'd snap at anyone who came too close. But was it anger or heartbreak? The next morning I stopped my car and stepped out. He stiffened, head low, body tense. I whispered, "Hey, buddy." His ears twitched, but he didn't move, just stared. I placed a piece of chicken, 5T from the steps, and backed away. He waited until I got into the car, then crept forward, limping ribs showing through matted fur. He ate slowly, as if not sure he deserved it. My chest tightened. I returned the next day, the same routine. I'd sit in my car, watch him eat, and talk softly through the window. His tail didn't wag, not even once, but his eyes changed. Less fear, more curiosity on the fifth day. I placed the food on the ground and sat on the curb close enough for him to see me, far enough for him to feel safe. He took longer to approach, but this time after eating, he didn't go back to the porch. He lay down right there, resting his chin on his paws, looking at me. I whispered, "What's your name, boy?" He blinked slowly, as if telling me he'd forgotten. The next morning I found myself back on that same curb, coffee in hand, heart pounding. He was already watching me. No barking, no growling, just those heavy eyes waiting for what I would do next. I placed the chicken on the ground a little closer. This time he hesitated, paused, trembling slightly, then stepped forward. His breathing was shallow. Every move screamed distrust. I stayed still. No sudden movements, just soft words. "You're okay. I'm not going to hurt you." His ears twitched. He sniffed the air, took the food, and this time he didn't turn away immediately. He just sat there watching. Minutes passed. I felt the weight of his silence. He was deciding, testing me. Then something small but monumental happened. He lowered his head and licked his paw nervously. I knew what that meant. He wanted to believe. The next day, I brought a blanket and sat even closer. I didn't look at him. I just sat. My side turned, making myself small. Non-threatening, he inched forward, paws scraping softly against the broken wood. The distance between us was less than 4T. Now the air felt electric. Every muscle in his body was tense. But he was there. He hadn't run, I whispered again. "You're not alone anymore." For the first time, his tail twitched, not a wag, just a twitch. But it was enough. That night as I drove home, tears blurred my vision. I didn't even know this dog's name, but he was already in my heart. I promised myself I wouldn't give up on him the next morning. The porch was empty. My heart sank. I scanned the street, the yard, panic rising in my chest. Then I heard it, a soft rustle behind the bush, as he was there, watching me closer than before, almost like he had been waiting for me this time. I sat down on the curb without saying a word, placing the food at my feet. My hands trembled. I didn't know if I was pushing too fast, but he took a cautious step out from the shadows. He sniffed the air, eyes locked on mine. I could feel his hesitation, the weight of all the hurt he carried, but hunger and hope fought against fear. Slowly, carefully, he approached. I kept my gaze soft, my breathing slow. When he finally reached the food, he didn't grab it and run. He ate piece by piece right beside me. I whispered, "Good boy." His ears flicked, and for the briefest moment, he closed his eyes like he wanted to believe those words. When he finished, he sat down right next to me, his body still rigid. But he stayed. The porch was no longer his refuge. We sat there for nearly an hour. Cars passed, birds chirped. But for him, the world had narrowed down to this tiny corner of Austin and the human who kept coming back before I left. I dared to stretch out my hand slowly. Palm up. He didn't sniff it. He just looked at it and then at me. And in his eyes, I saw it for the first time. Trust was beginning to flicker. The following morning, I brought more than food. I brought hope in the form of a soft leash and a quiet prayer. He was already there, sitting on the curb where I usually sat, waiting for me. My heart clenched at the sight. I approached, slowly kneeling down, laying the food in front of him. He didn't hesitate this time. He ate without fear, then lifted his head, looking directly at me. I spoke softly. I'm going to help you, buddy, but I need you to trust me just a little. More I set the leash down between us, he froze. His breathing quickened. I could see the battle raging inside him, fear of being trapped, but also the longing to belong again. I didn't push. I let him decide. Minutes felt like hours. He sniffed the leash, then looked back at me. His body trembled, but he didn't back away slowly. I reached out inches at a time until my fingers brushed his fur. He didn't flinch. My heart raced. I gently slid the leash around his neck. The second it clicked, his body stiffened, and for a moment I thought I'd lost him. But then he leaned into my hand. Tears filled my eyes. I sat there with him, my hand on his neck, feeling the warmth of his body, the soft rise and fall of his breath. For the first time in 3 years, he wasn't alone. I whispered, "You're safe now." And for the first time, his tail gave a slow, hesitant wag. I named him Chance. It felt right, like he was finally getting the one thing life had denied him for so long. Chance didn't fight the leash. He walked beside me, slow and cautious, his paws moving like he wasn't sure if the ground would hold. Each step felt like a leap of faith. We reached my truck and he hesitated. His eyes darted between me and the open door. I knelt down and whispered, "It's okay. You're coming home." After a long moment, he gathered his courage and jumped in. He curled into the corner, shaking but silent. The ride home was quiet. I kept talking to him softly, telling him about the couch, the yard, the soft bed waiting for him. He didn't look at me, but I could see his ears flick every time I spoke his name at home. I left the door open and sat on the porch. It took him 10 minutes to step out. He sniffed the air, then the grass, then me inside. He wandered cautiously from room to room, his claws clicking on the hardwood floors. He finally settled on the rug in the living room, head on his paws, eyes watching me that night. He slept by the door guarding, still not sure if this was real or just another place he'd be left behind at dawn. I found him sitting by the window, staring out as if afraid the porch he knew was still waiting for him somewhere out there. I sat beside him. He didn't move away. I whispered, "Chance, you're home now." His head slowly dropped onto my lap. The next days were filled with small victories and quiet battles. Chance followed me everywhere, but never too close. He ate, but only if I was in the room. He watched me constantly, his eyes asking questions he didn't know how to put into words. I scheduled a vet visit. Getting him into the truck again was easier this time. He climbed in on his own, but the clinic, the bright lights, the unfamiliar smells, they terrified him. He pressed his body against mine. Trembling, the vet was gentle, her voice soft. She examined him slowly, talking to him the whole time. His ribs were sharp under her hands, his fur patchy and dull. But what worried her most was his breathing. Shallow, strained, X-rays showed damage. His lungs had scarring likely from years of exposure and untreated infections. He needed medication, expensive medication, and rest. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "We'll do whatever it takes." On the drive home, I kept one hand on his back, feeling the slight tremors that still ran through him that night after his first dose of medicine. Chance did something that broke me. He laid his head on my foot, not out of fear, not out of habit, but trust. Tears fell and I didn't hide them. I whispered, "We're going to fix this. You're not going to fight alone anymore." His tail thumped once, soft but sure. He was finally starting to believe. Weeks passed, and each day brought small changes that felt like miracles. Chance started to meet my eyes without looking away. He followed me into the yard, sniffing the grass, feeling the sun on his face like it was a new discovery. But nights were still hard. He would pace, whining softly as if haunted by memories of that porch and the years of waiting. I'd sit on the floor beside him until he finally settled his head heavy on my lap, eyes half closed but never fully asleep. The medicine helped, but there were setbacks. Some mornings his breathing was ragged. He'd struggle to climb the porch steps. The vet warned me his lungs were fragile, and recovery would be slow, uncertain. Still, he fought. One rainy afternoon, I opened the back door, expecting him to stay inside. But Chance stepped out into the downpour, lifting his face to the sky, letting the rain soak his fur. He stood there for minutes, unmoving. I watched from the doorway. Hardang, he wasn't afraid of the rain anymore. He wasn't trapped on a porch, helpless. He was free. I called his name softly and he turned ears, perked eyes brighter than I'd ever seen. He trotted toward me, not cautiously but with purpose. And when he reached me, he pressed his head into my chest. For the first time, he wasn't surviving. He was living spring, brought warmth, and with it, hope. Chance began to explore farther into the yard. Nose to the ground, tail wagging softly, his steps grew steadier. His breath less strained. The porch he once sat on for years was now just a memory, and he didn't look back. I started taking him on short walks through the neighborhood. At first, every car, every sudden noise made him freeze, but I'd kneel beside him, whispering, "You're safe," until he took the next step. Neighbors who once threw scraps from a distance now stopped to greet him. They couldn't believe it was the same dog. One woman's eyes filled with tears as she whispered, "He never let anyone close at night." He found his place on the couch beside me, his head resting on my leg, his breathing calm. Sometimes he'd twitch in his sleep. Maybe memories still lingered, but when he woke, he'd find my hand waiting for him. Then came the moment I'll never forget. We visited a local park. Children played, dogs barked, and Chance sat quietly by my side. A little girl approached her, hand outstretched. I held my breath. Chance sniffed her fingers, then gently licked her hand. The girl giggled. Chance's tail wagged, not hesitantly, but joyfully. I knelt beside him, whispering, "Look at you, buddy." He leaned into me, eyes soft, heart finally open. He wasn't the dog on the porch anymore. He was home one morning. I woke to the sound of soft footsteps in the hallway. Chance stood by my bed, his eyes bright, tail wagging. Slowly he nudged my hand, something he'd never done before. I laughed, rubbing his ears. "You ready for an adventure?" We drove to the lake outside Austin. I wasn't sure how he'd react. Water had been part of his fear for so long, but today felt different at the water's edge. He stood still, ears forward, nose twitching. The breeze ruffled his fur. He took a tentative step toward the shore, then another. His paws touched the cool water. He didn't pull back. I sat down on the grass, giving him space. He looked at me, then back at the lake, and then slowly, bravely, he walked in until the water reached his chest. He turned his face to the sky, eyes closed, breathing steady. Tears filled my eyes. He wasn't just healing, he was reclaiming his life when he came back to shore, soaked and panting. He ran to me, tail wagging furiously. He pressed against me, water dripping onto my clothes, and for the first time, he barked a single joyful sound that echoed across the water. I hugged him, not caring how wet or muddy we both were. "You did it, Chance," I whispered, and I knew in that moment he truly believed he was loved. The months that followed felt like watching a miracle unfold. Chance transformed from a shadow of a dog into a soul full of light. His fur grew thick and glossy, his steps confident. The porch where he had once sat forgotten and broken was now just a distant ghost in his past. We went everywhere together. Parks, trails, even coffee shops with outdoor patios. People would stop and ask about him every time I told his story. And every time, Chance would sit proudly by my side as if he knew those words belonged to him. But life has a way of reminding us how fragile everything is. One morning I noticed his breathing sounded different, shallow, weaker. He struggled going up the steps, his tail wagged, but his body told a different story. The vet confirmed what I feared. The scarring in his lungs was permanent. The medications had helped, but the damage was too deep. He had maybe months, maybe weeks. I sat in the truck with Chance, tears streaming down my face. He rested his head on my lap, his eyes calm. He wasn't afraid. That night we lay together on the couch, and I whispered to him all the things I had never said out loud. How much he changed me, how he taught me about patience, trust, and forgiveness. And even as his body weakened, his spirit stayed strong. Chance didn't just find a home. He became the heart of it. Chance's story is more than a rescue. It's a lesson in resilience, trust, and unconditional love. He was left behind, broken and forgotten, yet he never gave up hope. He waited year after year, believing someone would come. And when I finally did, he told me far more than I ever gave him. He showed me that healing takes time, that trust isn't given, it's earned slowly, patiently, with every gentle word and every quiet moment. Chance spent his final days surrounded by warmth, care, and love. He wasn't alone anymore. He left this world with his head in my lap, knowing he mattered, and I will carry him with me forever, if chance. The story touched your heart? Please share it. Your voice can help save another dog still waiting on a porch somewhere. Hoping someone will come to subscribe our YouTube family, The Animals 2.0.